Hi, my name is Killian.
I'm Sophie.
And I'm Brienne.
And we are students in interactive digital media, and we've been living in Dublin for a year.
We want to do a project about Dublin because it's a huge city with a small town feeling.
We really appreciated the small businesses in the area and their camaraderie, which is why we chose our project, BisCast.
When a crisis strikes, small businesses are some of the worst hit. But as Irish novelist Edna O'Brien said, when anyone asks me about the Irish character, I say look at the trees. Maimed, stark and misshapen, but ferociously tenacious.
The first thing we did was bag up the stock that we had.
We had to remove all the seats inside and we were able to expand the fridges.
When ships lose their way during a storm, they use the stars as guides. That is what BisCast does. It provides small business owners with the support they need to navigate the storm. BisCast uses real-time, crowdsourced data from Dubliners to advise best practices during times of crisis. It is the only platform that caters specifically to Dublin's SMEs, allowing businesses to create profiles, connect with other users, view recent statistics, filter through our repository of adaptation success stories, and more. When faced with a crisis, together we can weather the storm. That is the spirit of Dublin. That is BisCast.
As of tomorrow, our schools will close, our creches will close. We're banning all indoor gatherings.
COVID-19 swept through the world in a surprising and devastating blow. Many businesses, particularly the small, locally run organizations, were unprepared for the financial and personal weight of the pandemic. Lockdown became a make it or break it for SMEs, also known as small and medium businesses, some of which had been in operation for decades. They needed help. One day, not long after lockdown, I happened to be walking down the canal when I noticed a small restaurant open. Restaurants were not considered to be essential at the time, so I was surprised to see that it was opened, as all were required to close their doors except for takeout. When I entered, I noticed the breakfast restaurant was no longer providing sit-in dining, but instead had turned into a food retailer, or a small grocery shop, where they had packaged all of their stock and were selling it on a new-built shelf and aisle system. Grocery stores were allowed to be open, and this restaurant had adapted to the current landscape, keeping them in business while also keeping their suppliers afloat. To further my surprise, when I asked if they carried a certain product, they directed me to another shop down the street that did. This is when I knew the project I wanted to create involved capitalizing on what makes Ireland's small business community special: their sense of camaraderie and ability to adapt. Small businesses are the heart and soul of Dublin's economy. And that is how BisCast began to develop. When we originally selected our team, we felt it was important that our group members were all local. The project was focused on Dublin, and we knew it would involve boots-to-the-ground research. This did limit the number of people that were able to be in our group, which ended up being only 3, smaller than other class groups of 4 or 5. This meant more work, but ultimately, being a group that was able to meet locally and in person was important to us.
This is what Killian's brain looks like inside a CT scan? Yeah.
We then delegated roles based on our skill sets. I was named project manager based on my experience as a teacher, while Killian was named designer and Sophia was named GDPR specialist and story writer. Sophie and I jointly took on the project's main research, which involved reaching out to SMEs to better understand the small business landscape in Dublin to appropriately populate our app with useful, relevant data. Naming our company BisCast was a week-long process. The root word cast means to throw or to spread. Add biz, a modern shortening of the word business, and you have a word similar to newscast, forecast, and broadcast, which all connotate the spreading of information. Killian was also named tech lead, and he developed most of the app, but he also assigned Sophie and I to be in charge of the SQL database, survey questionnaire, and search menus in the system. Originally, we planned on using either Microsoft Teams or Google Suite to communicate and organize our documentation. We had discussed different platforms with multiple people and also did research on the benefits of some over the others. We started with Microsoft Teams, but after setting it up, we quickly realized there would be a significant learning curve to utilizing the platform effectively, and with only a little over 2 months to complete our project, we decided on Google Suite instead. The Google Suite also had a blogging platform, email, docs, forms, and more, but its largest benefit is that we were already comfortable using it. Throughout the project, we met virtually with Nina Bresnahan, our project advisor, almost every Monday at 11:30 to discuss our group's project and set weekly goals. After the meeting, I would send out a weekly task list for all group members based on our conversations. Tuesday and Thursday ended up being our in-person weekly meetings, and the rest of the week and weekend was set aside for our independent work.
Our project was very much research-based, and the research we had made on design and businesses and Dublin in general determined our content at the end.
The goal of our project was to help small businesses that were facing a big challenge in uncertain times, use the skills that we acquired during our IDM course, and create a project centered around Dublin, as we had all spent the last year discovering the city. While exchanging ideas on how to incorporate all those topics, we soon realized that we were getting ahead of ourselves. To get a better idea on how SMEs operate, we identified a list of agencies and compiled a list of people who might be able to help us. In total, we contacted 8 agencies, including IBEG, ISME, and others that you can see appearing on the screen now. Brianne and I spent the next few days calling up and emailing those agencies, describing the goal of our project, explaining our idea, and asking for input and recommendations on how to implement and improve it. At this point, our idea was starting to take shape. Deidre from Microfinance Ireland helped us determine the specifics of our concept, as you can hear in this Zoom call.
It needs to be tangible as well. People that's concrete, testimonials, of course, but there has to be something tangible along.
Yeah, so you like the idea of it being a repository for ideas, and that is how it's almost, you kind of satisfy that quid pro quo. You know, you come and give me some information, and here's our repository of ideas.
Yeah, and we've divided, we'll categorise it for you, and we'll make it applicable to your business.
After that meeting, we finally had a clear idea of what kind of assistance business owners were looking for. We decided on a web app that connects small business owners. It would be a tool for them to see real-life adaptations done by other businesses. We agreed that an online survey, along with physically visiting businesses and manually inputting data, was the best option. However, we did not have a contact list and needed someone's help to get the survey out. To this end, Adam Wedderly, the Learning and Development Manager at ISME, provided us with helpful insights. During the phone call, he warned me that it would be difficult to engage with small business owners, especially if we would be sending out a survey. The response to this kind of emails is usually very low. He therefore encouraged us to go to brick-and-mortar stores, door to door, and ask questions. From the beginning, this method of collecting data was part of our plan. However, after the conversation with Adam, we realized the importance of it. First, we created a survey on Qualtrics where we asked participants about their business, specifically the impact on profits and on the number of employees, and the duration of closure after restrictions were imposed in Dublin. After finalizing it, we had 2 distribution channels to get the survey out. Firstly, through ISME, their quarterly publication, the BisMe, which was being published at the end of August and sent out to 10,000 email addresses. Secondly, boots on the ground, we went door to door to small businesses asking them questions. We were pleasantly surprised about how open people were.
Okay, 2 old gentlemen having a conversation. My wife and I went to a really nice restaurant yesterday. Oh really? What is it called? We call it flower, you know, the red one. It smells nice. It's got thorns. Rose. Yes, that's it. Rose, what is the name of that restaurant we went to last night?
They were willing to answer our survey questions, and some agreed to be interviewed. At the end, we had gone to more than 20 businesses and collected a variety of stories, photos, and video footage.
Do what you just did to open it? Very cool.
So, down like that and pull.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, so you don't have
3D printing, yeah.
3D printing.
Sebastian, can you tell us what you did to adapt during the lockdown and the COVID-19 crisis? Because I see that this looks all new to me.
Obviously with all of the restrictions on the virus, we decided to make a little bit of a change. So first thing we did was bag up the stock that we had, and then we slowly started to introduce some products that aren't readily available in other shops.
Initially in this project, I had thought that this would be a big design endeavor for me, but this project allowed me to learn and grow a lot more when it comes to user experience implementation. So a lot of the ways that the user was going to use the application ended up determining a lot of how the design looked instead of it being built the other way. And so a lot of research was planned on how the user would interact and how the display would work for the visitor on the application before even colors were determined.
Very early on, my teammates and I decided that I would be the UX UI designer, or at least be in charge of a lot of the design part of this project, seeing that it is the main key points on which I would like to build the rest of my career. The whole project would be a powerful element to have in a portfolio. We decided at first to approach this project almost as a whole business. So the first step in the design process was to create a brand identity and a brand book from there on. This was even before looking at user experience or user interface in the actual application itself. I created a visual identity very early on, even before we had found the name of our application. The first step was a color palette, a dark backdrop with the two neon colors to contrast. To me, this palette represents quite a modern aesthetic. I had researched a lot of data visualization application, and the concept of the galaxy came through all this research. The idea of looking to the stars for guidance, like sailors would have done for navigation, came up as a strong visual cue for the app. We then decided upon the name BisCast. The umbrella logo came very naturally in the simple concept of shelter from bad times, but also shelter that can be shared, used to shield others and not just oneself. Lastly, research was done in the user experience and user interface of the application, especially in the way the user would interact with the story menu and the galaxy motif. Special search into details of hover interaction, the freezing animation, Z-index changes, and the way the pop-up blurbs appear on the screen without cropping out of the window help construct the interaction with the system that could seem quite random at first glance. When it comes to the general aesthetics of the application, current trends of UI design were taken into account. Specifically, the glass effect and the rounded edges on most elements, which help fit the web app within the current mood of soft and almost dreamlike websites. When it came to actually coding the app as a team, we knew that we would be working with JavaScript, Node with the Express framework, and MySQL as a database, which are the systems that we had been learning over the year. The way I first approached the app was to build at first a static client-side version of the application to help clarify the different elements that would be essential to it, as well as work on the design aspect of it in a structured way. Then those pages were turned into interactive EGS files and then hooked to the server and the database. The baseline of the app system was created that way. The ability to log in, register, explore the application, such as reading the stories or statistics, and then delete the profile, were created thereafter. Brianne and Sophie created the logic of the database, as well as the search engine logic. They will explain more on that topic.
For our SQL database, it was straightforward. We had to make a list of information we would need to store, then order them into different tables and columns. The search engine was more complicated. After figuring out the logic, we decided on the parameters, the so-called tags, to make the results sortable. The user would have to make a selection of 3 criteria: the business industry, the size of the business, and a broad category of an adaptation that they were interested in. We then built the mechanism for the right stories and statistics to show up on the main page after the selection of parameters.
A lot of the future developments that we have in mind are linked to the fact that we are not professional developers. We preferred developing the main aspects of the app in the allotted time, making sure that those systems worked. So a main future concept would be to have an instant messaging system instead of a forum or messaging board. Similarly, to help the concept of camaraderie and inter-business help, we wanted to join at the bottom of each story the contact of the business who the story concerns, given the opportunity for the businesses to look deeper into those stories and also create cohesion throughout the app. Furthermore, each story that different businesses would have would appear on their profile. We populated the app in a virtual way. The login system we used is a fictional one. The stories we collected are not, however, so we weren't able to implement that feature. Another future development we have in mind concerns the search system. The very first element to select from would be the various crises that the app has recorded, instead of having the app focus solely on the COVID crisis. Even now, when speaking to businesses, the next crisis that they faced was the lifting of COVID lockdown laws and the way to reinstate the business in the new everyday life we face.
Having spent time going to businesses, we are aware of how time-consuming and demanding it is to find a good story to add to our web app. Therefore, in the future, we would like to hire someone, preferably a journalist. We would like the future of the app to focus on showing the human experience behind the stats, which is what we discovered most business owners would be interested in based on our research. As Adam predicted, we did not get many answers on the online survey. To encourage small business owners to answer our questions, we would like to provide something in return, be it a promotional spot on the web app or another service. Also, our web app has the potential to reach other cities. It does not have to be specific to Dublin. It can be global.
Thank you for your attention, and we'd also like to acknowledge a few people.
Specifically, we'd like to thank Nina, who was our supervisor, and also all the other professors at Trinity.
As well as the small business owners and the agencies who are willing to talk to us.
And we would also like to thank any other people who helped us along the way.
Cheers.
Peace.